Hi, I'm Neil Slobin. I'm your teacher, and I'm posting this video as one of what I hope will be a series of shorter videos and probably longer videos at several points. But I want to do some shorter videos to sort of tie things together and comment on topics that we're talking about in the class or that I think you should know. Um, some of you have already seen a video, perhaps, of with me that I've done, uh, and some of you haven't. And the reason that I put it that way is that these shorter videos don't necessarily have a predetermined sequence, and some of them are they're sort of mix and match. So don't be frightened if you haven't seen me already. Don't be frightened if you have seen me already. I suppose seeing me too much would be terribly frightening. So I don't want to scare you away. Um, what I want to do in this video is to talk a little bit about what we're doing. And, what we're doing is philosophy. That's what this course is on. And, I think probably many or most of you have had, well, either no courses at all in philosophy or maybe just one. It's not clear what philosophy is, and so you may have taken it just because you're brave, or you covered your eyes and poked at the schedule and said, "Oh, philosophy, this guy, I'll take that." So, so I want to talk a little bit about philosophy. One of the ways to do that is to ask what is philosophy? I mean, what is it that we're doing when we do philosophy? And one thing I can say is that, one way to start is that philosophy, the word itself, philosophy, is made up of two Greek words, philos and sophos. And philos means friend or lover, sophos means wisdom or knowledge. And so when you put the word together, philosophy, what you have is a love of wisdom. A philosopher is a lover of wisdom. I suppose the easier way to say that is a philosopher is someone who's just very curious. What I think all of us philosophers have in common is that we want to know. We want to understand the world that we're in, and we want to understand it in what I might call large ways. We want to know big things. Um, so what we're going to be doing in this class is we're going to be trying to understand certain things that you know are in the world. Um, and one of the ideas we might think about here is that philosophy, one can be philosophical without being a philosopher. And what does it mean to be philosophical? It means it means to contemplate. It means to think, and which is to say that um, philosophy is thinking about the world. It's thinking about things. And so when we're philosophical, we are thinking. Um, but I also want to say that we're not thinking just in any way. Not all thinking is philosophical. And so we might ask, what's some of the difference between thinking philosophically and not thinking philosophically? Let me say that again to make sure that those of you who aren't confused will be confused. What's the difference between thinking philosophically and not thinking philosophically? Let's start with the second question. What does it mean to not think philosophically? Well, not thinking philosophically probably means to think about aspects of our lives that are fairly immediate and in front of us that concern us in a direct self-interested way. So I might say, I mean, we might think of an example of not thinking philosophically, as thinking about maybe a friend of ours who we've heard has been saying some nasty things about us. And so we think about that friend, and we might ask the question, why is our friend being nasty, you know, to us or saying nasty things about us? If we pursue that question, we're really not thinking philosophically. We want to understand, we want to know, how that came about. Did we do something? Did the friend do something that led him or her to say nasty things? And so we follow that. But if someone were to ask us what we were doing, we would not describe that as being philosophical. On the other hand, if we took that idea, if we took that question, that notion there, that a friend of ours has been saying nasty things about us, spreading nasty rumors about us. If we then asked, is this person really my friend? And then we might ask, what is a friend? What makes a friend, and what makes someone who is not a friend, and maybe an enemy? We might find, in fact, if we follow that question, we might find that our friend who said something nasty about us is actually not our friend, but maybe an enemy. But what happens is that we shift from a very immediate focus, a very immediate question. Why is our friend saying nasty things about us? To asking questions about what is a friend? What does it mean to be a friend? What does it mean to have a friend? Are there aspects of a relationship that are necessary to make someone a friend or not a friend? And so when we think philosophically, we we think generally. We start to look for general characteristics of something. We are removed from the immediate situation that may have actually led us to thinking about our friend, but we're thinking generally. What is a friend? What are the requirements of being a friend? We might then push that further. So I'm saying that if we start asking questions about friendship in general, we're thinking philosophically, but we can push it even more generally, and we might say, well, do all do all human beings, or do human beings generally require friends? Why is it that friendship is so important to seemingly to most human beings? And we might then find out things about what it is to be human. So we're not only finding things about friendship in general, what requirements there are to be a friend or not, but what distinguishes human beings from maybe other kinds of creatures. And we might say that one of those things that distinguishes human beings is the ability to have friendships. And I don't want to get too far off in that. We already get complicated. But the idea is that we go from non-philosophical questions that are immediate to philosophical questions that are general, and that we're thinking in a more typical way. We're looking for general features, to even more general features. So what it means to be philosophical is to think about those general aspects that affect our lives. And so if we want, we can take the general aspects and work backwards from them. Why is our friend spreading nasty rumors about us? What is a friend? What are the requirements of being a friend? We look at those. We find some requirements of being a friend. And then we work back to the particular, and we think, well, maybe this particular friend is not meeting the requirements of being a friend. So maybe they're really an enemy. So we might ask, well, what does it mean to be an enemy. The idea is that as philosophers, we not, and certainly not in all aspects of our life, we have immediate needs and desires and so on that we need to fulfill. But as philosophers, we're interested in the general, and so when I say that philosophy is a love of wisdom, philosophers are curious. What we want to know are the general features of the world. We want to understand the world, and and what's going on in it. And so one of the requirements of being a philosopher is to ask these general questions. And one of the requirements of probably being a good philosopher is to be interested in these general questions. And not everybody is interested in these general questions. I am sure that some of you, after barely 11 minutes in this, are thinking, what does this mean? What this is utter nonsense. Why should we be interested in this? And there may be some answers to that, why you should be interested in this. Maybe we'll figure it out during the term. Ultimately, I can't force you to be interested in it. You will have to come to this class with your own interests. You'll have to be able to push yourself to seek out these general features, these general ideas that we're talking about. I hope to lead us into this a way to give us ways of thinking about this. And one of the ways that I hope to lead all of us into being at least philosophical, if not philosophers, is by asking questions. And that's a really important aspect of philosophy. Philosophy is directed by the questions it asks. And so I can say that in a more technical way. Philosophy is question specific. It's question directed. We are always in philosophy seeking questions, and we're seeking the right questions. And so it is a conviction of philosophers that we don't necessarily always have the right question. A lot of philosophy is just figuring out what the right question is, or the better question is, and trying to pursue that. If you've asked the wrong question, you're going to get the wrong answer. I don't know any way around that. So it's really important to look for the right question. One of the functions that I serve as a teacher of philosophy is to lead us to the right question, or on a path to the right question. I don't feel that it's my responsibility as a philosopher to answer those questions. I have my answers. I will give them to you. Some I won't, because I think they're too overbearing and not quite my place. And so the answers I'm much less concerned with, but I'm very concerned with the questions that we pursue. And so one of my main tasks as a teacher, professor of philosophy, is to get us to the right question. And that allows us, at some level, as being philosophical and being philosophers, that allows us to follow our curiosity. If I can quote Plato here, philosophy begins in curiosity. Philosophy begins in wonder. I think the one characteristic that all philosophers have in common is that we look at the world wanting to understand it, and so that's how we go at it. So what we're going to be doing in this philosophy class, behind all those specific things, is wanting to know, is wanting to understand. I hope that you will meet me there at least halfway and at least give it a shot. Now, I want to also say that that when I was first starting out in philosophy in undergraduate school, my relatives would frequently and annoyingly and obnoxiously ask, well, what are you going to do with philosophy? And some of my smart mouth answers were that, I'm going to open a philosophy store. I'm going to have, I'm going to sell, ethical ideas here, and I'm going to sell metaphysical ideas here, and I'm going to sell ideas about reality here. That's what I'm going to do. It's going to say philosopher's shop. That was my smart mouth answer. In fact, that that makes a point. Is that what do you do with philosophy? And I've come over the years to, I think this is how I was approaching it, but I've come over the years to think that what you do for the correct answer with what are you going to do with philosophy is the same answer, and I mean pretty much the same exact answer is as if you were going to be a baseball player. If that's what you really loved to do, and you wanted to be a baseball player, and someone asked you, well, what are you going to do with being a baseball player? What are you going to do with that? Or let's say you want to be a guitarist, or a singer. And if someone asked you, what are you going to do with being a guitarist or being a singer? I mean, what are you going to do with that? You might say, well, I don't know, I guess get in a band and so on. But the real answer, I think, is that you're a singer because you love singing. You're a guitarist because you love playing guitar. You are a baseball player because you love playing baseball. I think the same answer is true with philosophy. I am a philosopher because I love doing philosophy. I love to understand the world. It's just what it excites me. I know that's strange, but it gets me excited in a way that few other things do. And so with philosophy, I can't tell you, and if I did tell you this, it would be wrong. I can't tell you you're going to make a lot of money. You won't if you went into it professionally. I don't make a lot of money. I haven't made a lot of money. So I can't tell you that it's a good career choice. It ain't. But I can tell you that if you like it, and that's what you and you like understanding the world and asking questions and thinking about sort of the general order of things, philosophy will be pretty good for you, and you might consider it at least as a sidelight, if not your main passion, as it were. Philosophy is its own reward, and being its own reward means like baseball and guitar and being a guitarist or a singer or whatever else it is you love to do. It's that, and that is why you do that. You don't need a justification outside of that in order to do it. Yes, it is true. We need to make money, and we do that. But what you really love to do is you do it because you love to do it. I have notes here on the side. That's why I'm looking off a bit. I just forget what it is sometimes. What I want to do. So being philosophical is thinking kind of in a general way. Now I want to make a distinction. I'll close out with this idea. It's going to be a couple minutes long. This short video is a little bit longer than I wanted it to be, but what a surprise as a philosopher. But being philosophical is not being a philosopher, and you're not a philosopher if you're philosophical. So what does it mean to be a philosopher, as opposed to merely being philosophical? I want to say that being a philosopher is being is recognizing the idea that no one can think for us. In other words, We are we are philosophers in a way that I have to do my own thinking. No one can think for me. So if someone asks me a question, a general question, what is friendship? Uh, since we've used that as an example, someone asks me what is friendship, and I say, well, I don't know. Ask Robert down the street. He's already thought about that. What he thinks is what I think. Well, that's false. I don't know that he thinks what I think. And more importantly, even if we have similar thoughts, it's not my thought. No one can do my thinking for me. We all have to do our own thinking. We can't substitute someone else's thinking for ourselves. It's not our thinking. And if it's not our thinking, it's not us. It's not me. And so, where there is a distinction between being philosophical and being philosophers, and not everybody who is philosophical is a philosopher, I do kind of want to push in the direction that we are, in some sense, all philosophers because we all have to think for ourselves. It's what we do. I am my own thinker. You do not think for me. And when you think for me, when I accept your thinking without my thinking about it, I'm not me. I'm not you, but I'm also not me. And one of the really interesting features of life is, and certainly life today, is we all want to be individuals. You can't be an individual if you accept someone else's thinking, and take it as your own. That's not you. So if you think for yourself, I want to say that you are in fact being a philosopher in that time where you are thinking something through clearly, maybe in a general way that makes a difference. And so we can be philosophical, we can ask general questions, but we also, those general questions become part of who we are, and so we do really become philosophers. And so I want to say that in some really important sense, we are all philosophers. And so what I want to push us toward is being philosophers, is thinking, generally thinking for ourselves, and thinking in directed ways in responses to important in responses to in response to important questions. Um, the other thing I want to mention here, and this is awfully too long than what I intended, but I have to go with it because I'm there, um, is that this idea of thinking for ourselves, and that I am my own philosopher. It does not mean that I can think whatever I I want to think, and that whatever I decide is reality. That's probably false, and it's probably false that I can think about anything. I can't think about anything. I can't. I can only think about things that we can think about. So, for instance, I know that's puzzling, and some of you have probably bailed by now if you haven't bailed before now. But there are things that we just can't think about. I cannot think about a square triangle. I cannot think about a tall, short person. I cannot think about a hot, cold object. Those things just can't be thought about. If something is hot, it's not cold. To be hot means to not be cold. If something is a triangle, it can't be square. And so there are things that we can't even get a concept of. It's not that the concept doesn't accord with some reality. It's that the concept doesn't exist. A square circle, famous logical contradiction is a married bachelor. In its technical way, there's no such thing as a married bachelor. You can't even think about it. Now, So those are things we just can't conceptualize. But I also want to push on that in a stronger way. Um, we can't we can't decide that what we think is what is real, and therefore act on that or believe that. And what I mean by that is that there are constraints to the way that we use language that make it really difficult for me just to think anything. So, language limits us in what we can think. The ways we can think. Um, so, I cannot choose that a word means something that just is my private meaning to it. I have no private language. There's no such thing as a private language. All language is public, and I am limited and constrained, and we are limited and constrained by that by language. So I cannot tell you that you know after I finish with this video, hopefully in a very short time, I can't say to you, I'm going to go get in my desk and drive to the corner store and get, an ice cream cone. And if you listen to that, you might say, Neil's going to get in his desk and drive to the corner store? What do you mean you're getting in your desk and driving to the corner store? And I said, I'm going to get in my desk and drive to the cornerstone. And you probably should say, well, Neil, I don't think you're going to get in your desk and drive to the cornerstone, corner store. You're going to get in your car and drive to the corner store. And if I said to you, no, I'm going to get in my desk, it's my desk. I have my own private language. And so, I call it a desk. And you would say to me, Neil, you're not using the language correctly. You're not using the word desk correctly. It's called a car, and you would be right. And one of the points I'm trying to make here in a pretty tortured way, and not as clearly as I wanted to make it, is that language is public, and so even though we think at some level we think our individual thoughts, you have to think for yourself. It doesn't mean that your thinking and that your thoughts are private to you. We use language to think in. You can't think outside of language. And so language, this publicly owned property, or public property, we can't just make it into what we want to make it. We think privately using public concepts and public ideas, and we can't just stitch them together in any way and make sense. And so when someone says to me, I think for myself on what I think is what is real, or no one can tell me what to think. At some level, that's true. No one can tell you what to think, but it's also true that you can't think anything that you just that you want to, and make sense. And so, at a certain point, I may say to you, if you insist on this, that you're just not making sense. So when I say that philosophy is that we're all philosophical, and at some level we are all philosophers, because we must all figure out things for ourselves and all think for ourselves. It doesn't mean that we think privately or personally in a certain way. We all think publicly, and we are all constrained by a world that is public. In fact, I would say that we think only by virtue of the public. We are, in our private lives, only what our public lives allow us to think. Now, that's a wide range, but it's not everything. So there are constraints on this. Now I know this is complicated, and I've gone way off. This is twice as long as I wanted it to be, but I felt at least that I wanted to give you some sense of what we're doing in this class. It's a philosophy class, and that means that we are going to think. We're going to think about things. We're going to think generally about things. We're not so much interested in our private, immediate concerns as we are in the general ideas and the general structures of what makes up our world. And so what we're really looking for in this class, and I'm going to introduce us to a new term here. We're looking for conceptual schemes. We want to know this sort of the structure and the general layout of the world that we live in, and it requires curiosity, and it requires wonder. And so in this too long piece, I want to say that what I really want you to take away from this is I really want you to be curious. I want you to be interested. I want you to wonder about things. I want you to ask questions about things. If you can, if at the end of the course, or in the middle and hopefully the beginning, but by the end, if you are asking questions in a way that leads you to think about the general structure of the world, I'll have been at least somewhat successful. Obviously, as you've seen from this video, which is even longer than twice as long as I wanted it to be, there is a certain survivability that you'll have to go through. I'm going to end this now. You will be getting, obviously, more things in the future, or the near future. Thank you for listening. I hope you have a good evening, a good day, a good morning. I hope you have a good time. I'll see you soon.